horse owners and veterinarians to vaccinate equines against African horse sickness or AHS. AHS is a notifiable viral disease that affects all equines and is often fatal. Horse owners in South Africa are reminded that the control of African horse sickness or AHS is of utmost importance. To discuss this further, we're joined now by Dr. Viviene Malan, State Veterinarian at the Western Cape Province Department of Agriculture. Dr. Malan, thank you for making time for us. How are you this Monday?
Good morning. No, it's a bit less wet here in the Western Cape today. Thanks very much. I hope you're well too.
And I'm sure that's welcomed very much. Thank you for your time. So what is AHS, Dr. Malan, and how does it typically manifest on the affected animal?
Yes, thank you. So it is a viral disease that affects mostly horses, as we said there. So other animals in that family are not necessarily affected by the disease in the same way as horses are. So we normally see the symptoms there. And so the reason for that press release was because the disease is transmitted by midges, and midges like wet weather, obviously, and then they breed better. So these midges then transmit the virus between horses. The symptoms normally in horses is very acute symptoms. So you will see them with a fever, and then they might just suddenly die, or typically they develop swellings above the eye in the typical form that you still see any symptoms. And then because it affects the blood vessels, they have difficulty in breathing later on, and then if they die, you get foam coming out of the nose. The same in horses then that are vaccinated, you won't necessarily see all these symptoms. So we would normally test any horse that's showing symptoms of a high temperature and not being well for horse sickness as one of the possibilities.
We mentioned the call to vaccinate all equines, but you do mention that horses are worst affected as compared to, I guess, zebras or something.
Yeah. So the statement should really be you must vaccinate all your horses. So the other animals, so zebras, we don't want them to vaccinate. They are carriers anyway, can be carriers. So the call is for the vaccination of horses.
So, with the control of AHS, there are 4 zones that South Africa is divided into that need to be taken into account. Take us through these.
Yeah. So, in order to export, we divide the country into these 4 zones. So, the infected area is the biggest part of South Africa, and as the name implies, this is where the disease occurs throughout the year, or can occur throughout the year. Then the next zone that is then between the infected zone and our area here in the Western Cape is then called the protection zone. So this is a smaller area. And then we have the surveillance zone, which is then around our free zone, which is a very small part within Cape Town itself, where we export our horses from.
Are there any AHS-free zones in the country that do not need to take control measures against the disease?
Yeah, no. So the reason for the free zone is specifically that we want to keep horses out of the free zone that could have African horse sickness. So the infected area, you can move your horse around as you like. But for any movement into any of the other areas, the protection zone, the surveillance zone, or the free zone, or even if you want to move within these zones, the easiest way is to say that as we move down south, the controls get higher. So any movement that goes further south, so protection zone to surveillance zone and surveillance zone to the free zone, those all need some form of control.
What do quarantine efforts look like for our export side of things, and how will AHS affect the export sector?
Yeah, so our exports rely on the fact that both our surveillance zone and our free zone must remain free from African horse sickness. So, which is the reason for then having all these movement controls, is that we want to ensure that any horse that moves down has either got a valid vaccination, is healthy before it moves, and then there is a permit issued for them to move. Within the control zone, as I say, the rules are slightly different, but basically the same principle. You can't move your horse unless it's healthy. So the quarantine period is normally around 3 weeks, and it is done in a specially designed quarantine station where the horses are then protected from midges. For the EU, we lock them up completely, and then we do a test afterwards. But as I say, any movement and all the outbreaks we've had in the past, thankfully a long, long time ago now, have all been because of the illegal movement of horses, or because of vaccination being done in the wrong time. And I think we're going to talk about that in a minute.
So, how often should vaccination against AHS be carried out, and is it illegal for equine farmers to refuse vaccination?
Yeah, so the Animal Diseases Act in the regulations state that you must vaccinate your horse once a year in the infected area and in the protection zone. So people should do that. Obviously, the state is not doing it for them, but you do have to vaccinate your horse in that time. So there was a problem with the supply of the vaccine, but we are assured now by the Onderstepoort Biological Products that the vaccine is now available. And the reason for putting out this press release was the fact that the uptake wasn't as expected, and we therefore want to encourage people to vaccinate. And then we're going to talk about sort of which time of the years you need to do. Let's say once a year, once the horse is more than 6 months old, you have to vaccinate them.
All right. We understand that low-risk season for African horse sickness in South Africa is between 1st June to 31st October. Does that mean then that in that particular period, the movement of horses is entirely safe?
No. So the reason why we're sort of mentioning that period, that is the time when the midges are at their lowest activity, depending on the temperatures. And thankfully this year it's been nice and cold, so we hope that that has sort of stopped the midges from moving about as they normally would. So, and the reason why it is important to try and vaccinate in this period, it is important, you are not allowed to vaccinate in another time in the protection zone or the surveillance zone. But in the infected area, we still recommend that you do it in that time. And the reason why is because this vaccine, the only one that's registered is the one that's produced by Onderstepoort, is a live vaccine. And it has happened in the past where midges have transmitted that by the vaccine virus to other horses. While if you do it then in a low risk vector period, those chances are lowered for doing it in that time. But you're still not allowed to move your horse. All the same rules apply whether it's a low vector season or not.
Are there any other ways to significantly reduce the incidence of illness and death from AHS outside of vaccines?
Yeah, so the vaccine is one important bit. So, but because there are so many different strains of African horse sickness, it takes 2 to 3 years before a horse is properly vaccinated. So in young horses, you need to take all the other protections. The midge, interestingly enough, doesn't like dark places. So the recommendation is that you stable your horse from 2 hours before sunset until 2 hours after sunrise. And then you can also treat them with an insecticide. It needs to contain the active ingredient DEET. And then if you spray your horse with that, then that'll also help to protect the horses. And then obviously if you can then make sure that there aren't any places on your premises there where midges can breed, then that will also help. So get rid of any standing water where the midges can breed.
So what assistance is there that's available then from the Department of Agriculture on vaccine education and access to equine farmers, and where can they go for assistance?
Yeah, so our animal health technicians, every state veterinary office have got a group of animal health technicians who are more than happy to give advice to farmers. So in the infected zone, in the protection zone, people can vaccinate their own horses. But it is important that if you want to move your horse, you must have it vaccinated by a veterinarian, and they must have a passport. But as I say, they can contact their local state vet offices. Our office details are all on our website, elsenburg.com. And in the rest of the country, they are welcome to contact their local state vets for any further information about the disease or how to prevent it.
Dr. Malan, we thank you again for your time and shedding light and education on this matter.
My pleasure, and I hope people are going to vaccinate well this year. Thanks very much.
A pleasure. Dr. Viviene Malan, State Veterinarian at South Africa's Western Cape Province Department of Agriculture, talking about African horse sickness that's here in South Africa, and the Western Cape Department urging horse owners and veterinarians to vaccinate equines against this sickness.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa